Welcome to the Standard Deviations podcast, presented by Orion Advisor Solutions and hosted by Dr. Daniel Crosby, Orion's Chief Behavioral Officer and New York Times best-selling author. Each week, Dr. Crosby interviews a fascinating new guest on a range of compelling topics, from literature to psychology to financial wellness. To learn more about Dr. Crosby's behavioral finance work at Orion, visit www.orion.com.
Hello and welcome to the Standard Deviations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel Crosby, and I'm joined today by my friend Jamie Bosse, who is a certified financial planner, financial educator, author, and most importantly, mom of four, who is passionate about helping families build confidence with money. She's a financial planner with CGN Advisors, and she's the author of a number of books, one of which is a favorite of my kids in their younger years. She's the author of Money Boss Mom, the popular Milton, the Money Savvy Pup children's book series, which my kids loved when they were little. But we're here today to talk about her newest book, Investing for Tweens, which introduces kids aged 10 to 14 to the fundamentals of saving, investing, and building wealth in a fun way. Jamie, congrats on the book and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so we're going to start off with an impertinent question that only a psychologist could ask.
Okay.
So there's research to show that last names have some pull, have some sway on people, like when it comes to their decisions and especially their occupational decisions. The sort of famous example of this is people named Dennis are more likely to become dentists. So I have to ask, are you bossy?
I am so bossy. Yes. Thank you for asking. I am a boss lady in charge. So yes.
Well, you are a boss when it comes to writing books. You've written so many wonderful books to help young people and families. We're here today to talk about investing for tweens. And when I was preparing for this, I actually thought of, I'm the parent of a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, as well as a soon-to-be 17-year-old. And when I thought about especially my 12-year-old son, there seems to be a black hole when it comes to tweens. When I think about just stuff that's available to him, whether it's entertainment, movies, books, and especially clothing, it just seems like there's this vacuum where we got a whole industry kind of focused on little kids and then, of course, adults and even teenagers. It seems like tweens kind of fall through the cracks. Why do you think this is, and why did you see fit to write a book that sort of spoke to this fairly niche generation?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there is kind of a lost generation with the tweens, where it's a short period of time where you're not officially a teenager. You're definitely not a grown-up, but you're not a little kid anymore either. And so I think it is harder to kind of target that audience. And I found that too when I was writing the book, because I have written to the adult audience before. I have written to little kid audience before. And as my kids got older, so I have two tweens. I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. And, I wanted to keep the content growing and keeping up with them as they're learning about money on their journey. And it is interesting because you feel like you can explain something to them in kind of a dumbed down way to make it really simple, but they don't want it that way. They want to know the details. They want to know maybe not the adult version with alpha, beta, and all those things, but they want to know the real story. They want to know about, the companies they can buy and what the projections are for how much you can earn and how long it takes to earn money. So it was really a fun kind of project for me to do alongside my kids to say, try to explain it and then run it by them and say, okay, does this make sense to you? How do you feel about this? How do you react when I say it this way? And so we were really learning together.
Yeah, that's really neat that you've been able to write these books that have sort of kept up with your family organically and really mirrored the path and have that focus group right there in the living room to always run these ideas by. We just moved, and so we're getting new bank accounts set up for our kids. And I've really seen what you've said to be true, right? My son, there's some portion of his bank account that doesn't get unlocked until he's 13. Like it gets more complex when he's 13.
Uh-huh.
And I was on a walk with him this morning and he was really frustrated by that. Like that was how he started the conversation. Like, why are they treating me like a little kid? And I mean, he's sharp. This kid's never spent a dime he's been given for a Christmas present in his life. He's got all these business ideas. He's sharp, and he felt really kind of insulted that he has to wait 6 months to unlock this. So yeah, it's an interesting group to kind of try and speak to. Again, I'm a psychologist. From a developmental standpoint, just in terms of where tweens' brains are at and how they think about the world and how they see the world, what do parents and caregivers need to understand about how 10 to 14-year-olds think and learn and make decisions that you think is important context for us?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because people think, oh, kids, it's, especially tweens, oh, they're too young for this. I didn't learn about this till I was 30, and they're just thinking that the kids can't handle it. But I think that, the way kids are thinking about things, they're already developing these money habits, right? And they might already have a lot of that solidified. Because as we're in your research, I think it's age 7 or 10 that, a lot of our money biases are already formed. And so at this tween age, they're already being influenced. They're influenced by the people around them and what they want to buy and how they want to spend their money and their time. They're already influenced by maybe social media influencers and what's going on there. So the tween age is really the time to start solidifying good habits and smart ways of thinking about your money and how you're spending it and how you're making it grow for the future, because, they're already thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things the book talks about is jobs, and we're in a season of that at my house too. And we're gonna have you settle a debate between.
Okay.
You're gonna be the judge here. Save my marriage, Jamie. No, you're gonna be. You're going to be the judge here. No, I think my wife and I are mostly on the same page here, but we've had a conversation here this year about the jobs thing because, we have one daughter who's 16, she'll be 17 next month. And we've wanted her to get a job, and our move has candidly kind of made it difficult. So as we've had conversations with my daughter about a job, there have been two jobs that have emerged. And we've had interesting conversations about those sort of two skill sets. And I'd be interested for you to weigh in here. So one we'll put in the category of like good old fashioned traditional W-2 employment, right? Like when I was a kid, when I was a 15-year-old, I worked at Baskin-Robbins for a couple of summers when I was like 15, 16, 17. I worked at Baskin-Robbins, and it was low paying and it was miserable and my arms hurt and I was sticky. And, the little league team would come in 5 minutes before close and 50 screaming kids want ice cream and you're trying to go home. But,
Yep.
in sort of in the spirit of walking uphill both ways to school, I felt like it built character, right? Like it was hard, and I worked in a warehouse in Alabama in the summer, and it was brutally hot. I had these jobs that paid poorly, didn't really teach me any skills that I was going to use, in my future. I've not used my ice cream scooping a whole lot as a chief behavioral officer. But I did feel like it was good for me in a way to just learn to work hard, to report to someone else. But then, and I think this is, a high class problem, to be candid. But as a sort of an upper middle class suburbanite, my kids also get these jobs where they're asked to babysit and they get paid, unreal amounts of money for relatively,
Right.
relatively easy babysitting job, or dog walking the neighbor's dog, and they'll make $20 to walk the neighbor's dog around the block twice, And so the conversation at home should be, should we sort of force my kids to get a lower paying sort of formal job where they're working at Taco Bell or working at McDonald's and reporting to a boss and, getting up early and getting yelled at? Or should they be taking these higher paying jobs, some of which, we have a friend who has a marketing firm and, would help my kids learn about marketing and Canva and things that they might use in the future. And it's air conditioned and it's nice. But as a parent, I'm like, oh, it's a little too cushy. So how do you think about this conversation about like learning work ethic versus doing perhaps the easier, higher dollar thing or the thing that might actually teach you skills for the future?
Yes, I love that. And I love that you want them to walk in the snow barefoot uphill both ways. Honestly, I think that both can be a really great experience, and having both sides to compare can be really effective, right? So I think, the W-2 job at Baskin-Robbins, you said you didn't really get a lot of lifetime skills out of that, but there were things you learned, right? Like punctuality, how to get along with others, how to manage your time, and also how to deal with a paycheck, right? Like understanding how the taxes come out and what that looks like. Because a lot of, college graduates struggle with that when they get their first job and they're like, what happened to my money? I'm supposed to make this much a month, but, it's only 2/3 here. Mm-hmm. So I think that can be a good experience to have. And then if having the more, the cushier job, I guess, where you make a little bit more money, get some great skills in the process, I think that can be a great thing to experience as well, where you've maybe already seen what it's like to work for the man at Baskin-Robbins, but then also see, what's different and what's improved about the experience at the marketing firm or the dog walking or babysitting business. So I think it's actually good for kids to get both of those experiences so they can learn from it and learn while you're in it. Because I feel like, you can explain something to someone, but they don't necessarily understand it until they've kind of lived through it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And indeed, that's kind of where we've landed to just, let them do both. Who am I to stand in the way of a $20 dog walk? But, but I do think it's important because I viscerally remember getting that paycheck and just thinking how puny it was. And, the way that my parents did it too is they sort of forced savings for college in addition. So, it's like you're making whatever, $5 an hour at Baskin-Robbins back in the olden days when I was working there. And, a third of that goes away and then your parents take some more. But it is a good introduction, I think, to real life and the adult reality of having a good chunk of your paycheck disappear.
Right. And then if you don't have that happening and you are working, the $20 dog walk job, how are you preparing for the future with that money when the employer's not doing it for you?
Yeah. So keeping on this, I actually received this from an advisor yesterday. I did a webinar with an advisor yesterday, and he asked me this question. It's one I've considered a lot, that I've had asked me a lot, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say. I think as parents of any age children, of tweens or of any age children, we have this sort of this paradox, right? On the one hand, we want to give our kids everything. We want to give them opportunities that we didn't have. But I think all of us have met kids who are entitled in a way, and we go, oh, geez, like, hey, I don't want that, right? I want to raise kids who have access to good things and who get to enjoy the finer things in life. But then I want them to also be of service to others and not be entitled and not be spoiled. When you're teaching your tweens about saving, investing, and working, what's the place for things like gratitude and entitlement and joy in that? And how do you think about teaching kids how to avoid entitlement in this process?
Yes, I love that conversation. So I think you're right. I think especially as, you mentioned like upper middle class lifestyle, you can afford all these things for your kids and you can afford to, have the good things in their lives that maybe you didn't experience as a kid. And those could be wonderful experiences. But I think as a part of those experiences, like they can be learning opportunities where you can talk to your kids about, how long did it take you to save up for that European vacation? Or, how did you plan for getting to this point in life where you travel to take lots of vacations every year, or whatever it is that lifestyle piece that you want to share, talking to them about how it took you a while to build up to that point where you were comfortable spending that much on vacation. And what are you giving up because you're spending on those trips versus not? Because I think where kids struggle is, money it's invisible, right? Like it's not something that they're seeing. They're not seeing your bank account balance and all those things going in and out. So making it kind of real for them of, we spend based on our values, and because we want to spend on these nice vacations, we don't spend money on nice cars or whatever it is. And, showing them what trade-offs you're making in real time, I think can be really helpful.
I like what you said about money is invisible. I have this theory that however you grow up, that's your normal. Like whether you grow up rich, poor, middle class, somewhere along that spectrum, however you grow up, that's sort of your homeostatic set point. That's your baseline for what's considered normal. And I think, in the same way that a fish doesn't know that it's wet, like you are swimming in, you're sort of swimming in financial and economic waters that you don't have a whole lot of awareness of. I think until your parents get specific and make it visible, right? Like these are the things that we sacrificed. Like this is what we didn't do so that we could do this. Like we did this because of XYZ value that we have. Yeah, I really like that because I think that people are just so unaware. I think money is so invisible to people at every stop along the wealth spectrum. It's so invisible to people unless parents get very intentional about making it visible.
Right. And if you think about just from when we were kids to now, I mean, you either had cash in your pocket or you didn't. And that's how you determined if you could buy something that day. But now most forms of money are completely digital and phone-based and card-based. And so kids don't actually see money or see that transaction taking place very often. They see you, use Apple Pay on your phone or slide a card, and it's just magically you're good to go.
It's funny because there's behavioral economics research on that the further you get from sort of that physical cash, the less real it seems. And I think some of the most interesting research is people are more likely to steal the less real it seems. Does that make sense? There are people who would steal your credit card number who would not reach into a tip jar and take out a $10 bill. Because the $10, taking out that $10 bill and taking it from a jar and putting it in your pocket is clearly wrong and is clearly stealing and is a very sort of obvious physical, transaction. Whereas, stealing a credit card number online in some sort of phishing scam feels sort of remote. And I think the same thing works. Well, we know from the research that the same thing works. People tend to spend more on Apple Pay than on credit cards and more on credit cards than on cash. Because the further removed we get from like the reality and the physicality of the thing, the more abstract it seems. So follow-up question there, right? Today's tweens are growing up with digital payments, investing apps, crypto, TikTok influencers talking about money. How does that change the parents' responsibility in the way that we teach about financial literacy?
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting about what tweens and teens are exposed to now versus their parents, that their parents might not actually know how to use the things that the tweens know how to use. You know what I mean? Or how they're doing things. Like maybe your parents don't have Apple Pay, but you know how to do it on your phone and things like that. So I think that's really interesting. I think just trying to figure out how to, put some parameters around things like, okay, this is how much money you have to spend or invest or whatever it is. And how are we going to make decisions within that? And then not always bailing them out and adding more for them to be able to spend, since it is invisible and they're just, spending willy-nilly.
Yeah. Say more about that.
So I think with kids, especially when we're just out and about, it's easier to pay for things like our digital ways, right? Like we're at the carnival with the kids. They want to play games. They want to ride rides. They want to do all these things. It's easy just to be like, click, click, we're good to go. But I think if you have that conversation beforehand, say, okay, each of you has this much to spend on games, this much to spend on rides. Here's the catch for that, or here's your debit card that has that much on it, or however you guys do the money with the kids. But making them plan around and figure out what sacrifices they're going to make and what decisions they're going to decide on in real time, and then not bailing them out when they mess it up. Right. So, one kid spends it all on rides, doesn't get to play any games, and is really sad about it. And it would be easy for you to just say, oh, we'll get you a couple of games. It's fine. But you want them to feel the pain of the decisions they made and the consequences that come with it.
Yeah, this is something you're kind of hitting me here. This is something I had one kid make a dumb we were on vacation. I had a kid make a dumb financial decision, and I bailed him out the other day because he was upset, right? He had done something, he had spent his souvenir money in a stupid way, and he was upset, and I'm trying to keep the peace. And so I was like, look, whatever, like I'll cover it, just because I'm annoyed in the moment. But I think that when we do that, we undo some of the most valuable teaching moments, back to this theme about making it real, making it visible, making it salient. I think, the times when I feel like I've taught my kids the best with respect to money, it's because money touches everything. I mean, there's 100 times within the course of any day where there's a financial decision to be made, and bringing the kid into that, helping them understand the trade-offs, and then sometimes helping them sit with the pain of a poor decision is something really powerful. And it takes it out of the ether. It takes it out of that abstraction. And dang it, Jamie, I just screwed that up the other day. So yeah, it's sometimes we do that to keep the peace, but I think it's a real disservice to their learning.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think but that's the innate part of the parenting, that we want to be there and we want to swoop down and we want to fix it and we want to make it better. But like you said, we're hurting the lesson and the learning in the long run. Yeah. So like at the fair with the kid that ran out of money and didn't get to play any games, I mean, they're going to remember that because that was painful at the time. And so next year with the fairs there, you could use it as a teaching moment before you have the conversation about how much they can spend, and say, okay, and remember what happened last year, the money goes quicker than you think. Let's make a plan for how much you want to spend in each area before you even get started.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I think a lot of parents, painting with a broad brush here, I've seen parents broadly do one of two things with respect to their financial upbringing. I think a lot of folks are sort of running the same playbook they grew up with, right? It's comfortable. It's all they know. They're sort of passing along what they learned from their parents. I think other people hated the way they grew up financially, and they run quite steadfastly in the other direction. My mom would tell you, like, she's a good example of this. She grew up in a house where everything was saved, everything was very thrifty, everything was reused and recycled and just used till it was threadbare. And she, in her own life, has gone very much in the other direction. It's like, if she's going to buy something, it's the best of everything. It's the newest of everything. And she's just sort of run very far in that other direction. How, as concretely, as practically as possible, how can we as parents look at our own money scripts and increase our awareness of how we grew up and what we believe before we start teaching the next generation, so we make sure we're not just passing down, trauma and bad decisions all the way down?
Yes, I love that. I do think it's important to figure out what your money biases are. And, I've used the money scripts tests with clients before, more in the way of, okay, you're now married, you're in a relationship together. What's each of your backgrounds about money? And then how do we need to talk about that? And how has your experience been different, so that as we're planning together, we know what to expect, and then you know what's kind of holding you back in the way that you're thinking. And so I think as parents, that could be a good exercise, not only for your relationship, but so you don't pass down the bad stuff to the kids too, or to kind of flip the script, in a way where you're like, okay, this is how I was brought up, and I know this is not true, or this is not how it needs to be. So I'm going to consciously talk about this in a different way around my kids.
Yeah.
Because whether you're talking to them or not, they're watching you. Like, they're watching how you respond to money when you're stressed out about, buying something or paying for something. Like, they see it. So they know that money is stressful, or, it's something that you and your spouse fight about. Like, they see it.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point that we need to name and highlight this, before you think about what you're teaching them, realize that the way that you're acting is teaching them a great deal in ways intended or unintended, right? Like, the things you're doing are already speaking volumes. So make sure you're doing the thing that you want to be doing. Is that the Clance? Are you using the Clance money scripts?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those Clance money scripts are fantastic. Big fan of those. I've written about them in my books. For Orion clients on the call, that we have something called the B520, which serves a similar function, sort of lets you know your money script across 5 different dimensions. But I think, whether it's the B520, whether it's the Clance money scripts, having some sort of tool to make, again, the invisible visible, to give some form and some shape to the attitudes you have around money, is a powerful first step. When it comes to mistakes, when you were doing the research for the book, what mistakes do you see parents making when it comes to teaching tweens about money, and what would you have them do differently?
I would say the biggest thing that comes up is that research shows that parents don't feel comfortable talking to their kids about money because they don't feel qualified to do so. So they feel like, I didn't do a very good job with money, so who am I to teach my kid about money? And so they avoid the conversation altogether. But what that does is then teach the kids, oh, money's taboo. We shouldn't be talking about it. It's not something we're proactive about. It's something we can't do anything about, right? Or they're just picking up some of those other cues from you if you're stressed around money and how you're reacting to money. So I think parents who are shying away from it because they don't feel like they've done a good job with money, that's not where you should be. You should use just basic examples of what's going on in life. Like we talked about, planning for going to the fair, talk about money at the grocery store, talk about money, how it's different in the summer versus during the school year, or when you're playing a travel sport or doing something, that your family likes to do together. It doesn't have to be like a big researched explanation of money or investing or anything. It's just kind of day-to-day life. Like, how is money working in our lives? How do I make decisions on that? What decisions do I have to make every day when it comes to money? And that can empower them to start, looking at money in a different way.
Yeah, if I had to break down what I'm hearing, it's almost like natural conversations and natural consequences, right? When money enters your day organically, use that as a natural conversation starter, a natural educational point at the grocery store, at the farmer's market, at the fair. Natural conversations and then natural consequences. If your kid, blows all their money on the ring toss, let them blow their money, and then, let them feel what they feel about that. I think that's strong. I think a lot of times, Jamie, we think that, we forget that by not making a decision, right, we're making a decision,
Exactly. Yeah.
The decision not to talk about it is still a decision, right? And so money's going to be part of your kids' lives one way or the other. You might as well be intentional about it. So for my last question, then, I would take the flip side. If there's one sort of positive thing that every parent listening to this could implement, one thing that they could do to help their tween build a healthy relationship with money, what would you say that is?
Yeah, I would say when the kid does make decisions around money, having follow-up conversations about that. Mm. So say they, decide to purchase something at the store with their allowance, following up with them, a week later or a couple weeks later to say, oh, are you so glad you made that purchase? Are you still getting a lot of use out of it? Would you have done anything differently? And it's just, an open conversation, not judgment, not shameful, nothing. It's just, are you happy with that purchase? And then that helps the kid kind of reflect on, okay, I did spend a lot of money. And what did I buy? Pokemon cards? Did I buy a new shirt? Like, what was it that I bought? And so if they've already forgotten the item or lost the item, then that's a good learning opportunity to not be mean and shameful to them, but just say, oh, how would you have done that differently with what you know now? And on the flip side, if they bought something that they get a ton of use out of and they love, celebrating that, we want to be spending money on things that we value and we worked hard for it. And that's great.
Yeah, I think this is back in that category of making the invisible visible, right? Don't let those opportunities pass by without highlighting the pros and cons of it in that postmortem. Okay, you spent your money thusly. How did it go? Why did it go well? Why did it go poorly? How will this impact your future decisions? I can see that being really simple and really powerful. Jamie, this has been brilliant. I know that I'm leaving feeling slightly implicated, but resolved to do better in the future as a parent. If folks want to check out the new book, tell us the name again and where they can find it.
It's Investing for Tweens, and you can find it on Amazon or Penguin Random House.
Okay, thank you so much, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Standard Deviations. If you can't wait till next week for more behavioral finance insights, visit www.orion.com. All opinions expressed by Dr. Daniel Crosby and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of or endorsement by Orion and its affiliates, subsidiaries, and employees. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for legal, tax, and investment decisions. The opinions are based upon information the participants consider reliable.
Time-weighted process, but they're all free. They're all out there for anyone to consume. I love hearing from readers and whatnot. So if you ever want to shoot me a note, it's cullenroach@disciplinefunds.com. I love to hear from people. So hit me up if you want to get long, boring emails from me in person.
There you have it. An invitation too good to pass up. Go bury yourself in that treasure trove of dorky ideas. Cullen, thank you for joining me on the show, man.
Thanks, Daniel. It was great talking with you.
Thanks for tuning in to Standard Deviations. If you can't wait till next week for more behavioral finance insights, visit www.orion.com. All opinions expressed by Dr. Daniel Crosby and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of or endorsement by Orion and its affiliates, subsidiaries, and employees. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for legal, tax, and investment decisions. The opinions are based upon information the participants consider reliable.